When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
This message is brought to you by Apple Card. Shave ice by the beach. A trip to the state fair. And a throwback flick at the local drive-in. They're more than just items to check off the summer bucket list. They're also opportunities to earn 2% daily cash back when you use your Apple Card with Apple Pay. Apply for Apple Card now and use in-minutes with Apple Pay. Subject to credit approval. Apple Card is issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com.
This episode is brought to you by Perfect Bistro Cat Food. Hey guys, today I'm interviewing my cat about his perfect bistro food. Percy, you seem to be a big Perfect Bistro fan. Care to comment? Totally. What do you like about it? You love the high-quality ingredients? And the delicious flavors, of course. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Listen to Percy, guys. Visit perfectbistro.com to try it for your cat.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Hibs Observer's Dunbar End podcast here at the Hibernian Training Centre. I'm Jack Harris, joined as ever by Hibs Observer editor Patrick McPartlin. It's a wee bit windy out. We were going to record outside, but in terms of audio, we don't want the headphone users to switch off.
I don't want the tripod to fall over.
There's so many things that could go wrong, and would go wrong. We've just been at the press conference ahead of tomorrow's match in the UEFA Conference League against KF Shkendija. Spoke to David Gray and Owen Elding as well. We'll start off with David Gray. Obviously a bit of a bumper injury update today. I'll see how I do with rattling this off. So Callum Wright in the squad for tomorrow. Needs to be assessed, just make sure there's not a reaction. I think he's trained fully this week. So just a case of making sure nothing bad comes of that. Jamie McGrath and Nicky Cadden out for tomorrow. So I think David Gray said they wouldn't be playing. Ante Shuto obviously back in, had the minutes against Motherwell, didn't take a reaction from that. So that's a positive sign for him. A couple of others. Obviously, Rocky Bashiri, long-term injury, but then Martin Boyle, I think a slight Achilles issue that David Gray said he recovered okay with, keeping an eye on him ahead of tomorrow. And then Joe Newell as well, felt that sort of little issue in the warm-up against Motherwell, decided he wasn't fit enough for the bench, so he's also been assessed. So lots to take away from that. I guess
and Miguel Chai was doing all right too.
And Miguel Chai was doing all right too. He was just tired. He had a bit of fatigue during the game when he came off, but nothing to worry about beyond that, according to David Gray. So
it's about he runs about because I think he covers more ground than anyone else.
He does.
So.
He does run a lot. He does. We'll allow him a bit of tiredness after that. Patrick, what's your sort of first reaction to all of that news?
It's mixed, isn't it? Because you look at especially Sunday, and I think going back to the first leg against Malasheva, and you think they're missing a lot of players, and it's obviously having an impact on, for example, who David Gray can bring off the bench, who he starts, how he plays as well. Because I think at the moment, without having a kind of an out and out playmaker, like Jamie McGrath's out, he's not had Callum Wright available. He has had to kind of go for this hybrid sort of, is it 3-4-2-1? Is it sometimes 4-2-3-1? Is it sometimes 4-3-3 sort of system? Like, it's all fluid, it's all flexible, which is, as we know, it's something that he likes, and wants his team to do. But I think having a few bodies back is just undoubtedly going to make it easier in terms of having a larger squad. It will probably make some of those kind of selection decisions trickier, but I think that's what you want as the manager. You want players who are desperate to be involved. I mean, Callum Wright had a disrupted pre-season. I think when he signed, he had a little bit of an injury that prevented him from sort of fully taking part.
Toe problem or something?
Something like that, yeah. And that kind of prevented him from fully taking part in the pre-season training camp in Ireland. He was doing sort of some kind of running away from the larger group, but he didn't play in either of the games. And I think having only sort of played a short, 40 minutes or something against Bromby, probably champing at the bit to get out there and get a few more minutes, and obviously make his competitive debut as well, because there's been that many games. You kind of forget that they're still waiting for him to make his competitive debut. So I think just having another body in midfield would be good for David Gray, good for the team. And I think depending on how, I mean, we're assuming from what Gray said that Miguel Chaiwa and Joe Newell are probably going to be okay for tomorrow, even if it's just to be part of the squad. Obviously, they'll make a call on that first thing tomorrow.
It seemed more a sort of just case of taking precautions, especially with Newell sort of not
Yeah.
not rushing him out into the fray if it was going to make anything worse.
Yeah, and I suppose, when you look at the Hibs squad, I mean, David Gray has said it's bloated. When you look at it, there's probably more kind of central midfielders than any other position. So not a huge issue if not all of them are available. They have like a certain number on the bench, for instance. But I think just good to have numbers back, and I think with the style of player that Callum Wright is, I think that's something that Hibs were certainly missing on Sunday and probably missing from the first leg against Malashave. Obviously the second leg, we know how that panned out. But again, you look at the subs that came on after the sort of the kind of 60-minute mark, and the kind of intensity fell away a bit. So I think just having players who can come on and just kind of keep the intensity at a high level is good. And I think, just to touch on Nicky Cadden and Jamie McGrath, the fact that they are in the European squad, they've been registered. We know that tomorrow's going to come too soon for them. That was Gray's line, that tomorrow has come too soon. But there must be a chance, I suppose. Certainly internally at Hibs, the feeling must be there's a chance that both of them could make the away leg, and that could be super important depending on how tomorrow night goes, depending on what you need from the away leg, from the second leg. So I think it's a strange one, because it's maybe slightly disappointing in the sense that you've only really got one person back who, I suppose you could, Joe Newell's been involved, so I'm not kind of including him, but only really one person who's not been involved as such so far coming back. But I think, when the kind of midterm, if next week is a midterm, the possibility of having McGrath and Cadden back for the return leg, could be really good. So I think, mixed news, and I think just Gray will just be happy to, and the players as well, just to have them back and available for selection as soon as possible, because you look at the squad, and obviously he's been able to name a full squad for every game so far, but I think just having a bit more to choose from and having a harder decision in certain positions is probably something he's been missing, and something he'll be looking forward to having back. Yeah,
I was going to talk about the 10-year plan. It's not a 10-year plan, luckily, but he was saying that in 10 days' time, the squad's going to look a lot different. Obviously, talks about the creative aspect he touched on as well in having a player like Callum Wright back. I think we saw elements of that in Motherwell, a sort of improved second half on the attacking front, but first half, I spoke about it in the piece, we spoke about it on the podcast, it's finding that sort of clinical edge into getting the ball into the final third and just sort of giving attacking players the chance to score the goals. Now, we haven't seen much of Callum as a Hibs player. Obviously you were there for the Bromley game, I wasn't, but I think everything we know about his profile, that's the type of thing that he can help with. Obviously, if you play the 3-4-1-2 as David Gray likes to do, you can play Callum Wright as the 10, sort of in behind two forwards, the likes of Nathan Lowe and Martin Boyle, now with a bit of a question mark over him, but I think like Nathan Lowe and Owen Elding, and then sort of Callum Wright playing in the balls to them, that's going to improve that sort of connection into the final third, I think. But
yeah, and he's also, you look at his stats for Wigan last season when I think he won all the awards at the end of season bash, and I think he's someone who will kind of create chances for others but also take them himself. I think, I don't have the stats to hand, but I think he was kind of like much and such the same for goals and assists. And I think if you're getting a player who's chipping in as many goals as they are assists from midfield, then that's obviously a good thing. I think back to last season, and I think obviously Josh Mulligan had a couple of goals before his injury. Jamie McGrath was really the only midfielder that I can recall who was sort of chipping in regularly with goals. I think Miguel Chaibo maybe got one, maybe two throughout the season.
Yeah, I would have said two.
Obviously scoring that one in Poland against Legia Warsaw, but Dan Barlaser didn't contribute anything in terms of goals. Joe Newell, I think I feel like he scored one or two.
Yeah, definitely had that one against Celtic at the end of the season.
So you're looking at kind of small numbers from your midfielders, and somebody like Callum Wright can come in and sort of just bump those numbers up, and you're helping out the strikers. Even though you've got Nathan Lowe sitting there saying he wants to score 20 goals, and Owen Elding saying that he sort of welcomes not so much the chase, but welcomes the battle for for being the top scorer. I mean, that's got to be a good thing, and I don't think Martin Boyle will want these young pups kind of upstaging him, given how long he's been at the club and his sort of personal targets and things like that. So I think it'll be an interesting battle just to get goals from that sort of front three, and I suspect Dante Sciutto and Thibaut Clige, assuming he's still here after the transfer window closes, then you would assume that they would want to be getting in and amongst the goals as well. But to have your midfielders doing that is obviously it's a sort of bonus above and beyond, if you like. And even speaking to the likes of Warren O'Hora in pre-season, and he was saying that he had a consistent season last year, probably his best in a Hibs shirt. I say that out of 2 possible seasons. But yeah, certainly a better season than his first. And he was saying the one thing missing from his game was goals, and that he felt he missed a few sitters. So you've got this sort of this mentality throughout the team of wanting to add goals, and those who haven't been contributing as much wanting to kind of change that and make sure that they're helping the strikers out. So even though you've got kind of 3 strikers there, if we talk about Boyle, Elding and Lowe, who are kind of super keen to score as many goals as possible, then if you've still got like midfielders who are saying, well, hang on, I want to try and chip in and get a handful of goals and assists this season. You've got the defenders saying, well, I wouldn't mind a couple of goals to my name too. Then that's obviously a good thing. And I think having like somebody like Callum Wright in there, who is no stranger to scoring goals and no stranger to setting them up, again is it's great for David Gray to have that in the squad. It's great for him to have it back available. And you've obviously got Wright himself will want to impress the fans. He'll want to kind of announce himself to his new team, if you like, and probably pick up where he left off at Wigan. And he has had that disrupted pre-season, and that'll be frustrating. So you'd imagine he's probably raring to go and just really keen to kind of make the fans sit up and take notice. When you look at Nathan Lowe scoring a double against Bromby, you look at him then getting on the score sheet in the second leg against Malasheva. Callum Wright will want to do something like that and just kind of reaffirm what he's here to do, what his strengths are, what he can bring to the side.
Well, that's one of the things he said when he joined the side, is when he wanted to get sort of fans up off of their feet, onto their feet. He wanted the fans to levitate with his FSU, but getting fans off of getting fans off of their seats is a difficult thing to do when you sort of sat on your own and not able to influence things. I mean, I don't remember sort of the kind of fan reaction, the atmosphere, that's the word I'm looking for, the atmosphere at the Bromby game at Easter Road, but you feel that's probably not sort of representative of what Easter Road can be like on a sort of full match day against a sort of top side or sort of Premiership afternoon, and that's the atmosphere.
European night.
Yeah, or European night, or top European side, you never know. But that's the sort of thing that he really wanted to get involved with and come and sort of impress the fans. One of those players that can be exciting, can create those moments that I talked about and create a bit of fun in the stadium. I think Hibs need that little bit of fun, that little bit of a spark.
Fun. Football's a matter of life and death, or more important. So
football is the most important of the least important things, or the least important, the most important thing, whatever the line is.
But no, you're right. I mean, you say Hibs need a spark, and they absolutely do. I mean, that was sort of what I felt they were missing against Motherwell. I know they got the penalty. I know they were sort of like camped in the Motherwell penalty box for long periods in the second half. I think a lot of the reaction was, I don't want to say overblown, because I know it's sort of like a hangover from last season, and there'll have been kind of doubts from the first leg against Malasheva, but I felt it was one of those games where it probably could have gone either way. Again, Hibs lose a late goal, which is concerning. They don't take their chances, which again is nothing new, but I felt they, even if it did look a bit chaotic at times the way they were playing, I think it did feel a bit less pedestrian as it has at some point. I mean, certainly when you compare it to the last time Motherwell played at Easter Road, and obviously got that 1-0 win, finished 4th, and
Hibs just didn't really look anywhere like sort of getting back into that game.
Exactly, and it just sort of felt a bit like such a damp squib. I mean, it had been a bit of a damp squib of a season, really, given that there was obviously the 3rd place finish in David Gray's first season in charge. You then had what Hearts were doing and what Motherwell were doing as well, and just Hibs sort of never really got going and never really kind of recovered from getting so close to sort of league phase football in Europe that it felt like it was a bit of a hangover for most of the season. And the way the season finished, it was like the campaign in microcosm, just a chance to really kind of make a statement by beating Motherwell on the final day of the season. It just didn't really happen like that. And as anyone who was at the game knows, it just became an exercise in trying to work out what was happening at Celtic Park in what was deemed a more important game by three stands at Easter Road that day. But I think, again, Hibs just sort of missed that spark, somebody to kind of put their foot on the ball, just, take a bit of a step back and just say, right, let's actually make this opportunity count. Let's not just sort of blindly fling over a cross and hope somebody gets on the end of it. Let's not sort of, shoot from 25, 30 yards and hope for the best. And you know what? Adam Mayer had a chance that was just over. Owen Elding, I think, probably had Alex Paulson a bit concerned when he had that effort in the second half.
Nathan Lowe as well, sort of been just shy of the far post. Yeah,
and that one that he sort of poked just wide. And I think, you're right to sort of, you point out, they did create a lot of chances, and David Gray was saying that, players were saying that, there were a lot of chances created, and it's just that being clinical. And I think if you have someone who can not only put the ball into areas where the strikers can be clinical from, but also be clinical himself, then you're contributing to Hibs ideally winning the game, but then you're also helping sort of solve kind of two problems rather than one, in that you're adding goals yourself, you're able to get on the score sheet, able to affect the game, but also just bringing others into it. And nobody's expecting Callum Wright to be the second coming of Scott Allen or anything like that, but just a player like that who can just kind of spark something in the team and just out of nowhere just produce a pass that just leads to goal, and you think, brilliant, perfect, 1-0 up, 2-0 up, whatever. And I think that's just what they were kind of missing on Sunday. And I think you look back to the second leg against Malasheva, and it obviously worked out really well that they had that fast start with 2 goals in 20 minutes, kind of cancelling out the advantage that Malasheva had. You then get a third goal before half time. You're giving them a bit of a mountain to climb. They have to go for it. You get a fourth, and I know they made it difficult for the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes with that late goal, but it's Motherwell obviously a step up in quality. I think Shkendija will be the same, and it's just about needing somebody in the midfield who can kind of unlock defences, who can get the most out of the strikers, because the strikers, obviously the three of them linked up really well against Malasheva, and then it just didn't quite fall for them against Motherwell. So you need, whether it's from the bench or whether it's from the start, you just need someone who can come in and just kind of make the difference. And it feels to me like that's what Hibs were missing on Sunday. That's why what could have been a sort of narrow 2-1 win ended up being a narrow 2-1 defeat. And the mood music doesn't change. The mood music is not sort of, we've built on Thursday night by winning our first game of the season. It becomes nothing's changed. We're doomed, this, that, and the next thing. So I think just a player capable of, as you say, getting fans on their feet, entertaining them, being fun, and above all else, just sort of creating goals, creating chances, scoring goals. It's not much to ask. But I think Callum Wright is probably looking forward to having that pressure, if you like, just to kind of come in and just be like, right, we need you to orchestrate things a little bit in midfield. We need you to kind of pull the strings, chip in yourself, but also just kind of make it easier for the strikers. So,
but it's good to have players back as much as anything. I don't appreciate the pejorative tone of the use of the word fun. I think that's what I go to football to watch. I like watching fun football. I like football that. I keep thinking it. I like football that gets me off my feet, sort of bouncing around. Well, I do like bouncing around in the stands sometimes, but
not when you're working though.
Not in the press box. No, it's
frowned upon.
It's killed that sort of joy, that sort of childlike joy of being in the West Stand. This is Anyway, that's my life as a Hibs fan, distilled into 15 seconds.
But I think when you talk about fun, I get it though. I mean, on a serious note, you want it to be entertaining, and I think, Craig Nisbet's talked about this when he's done his tactical pieces, the dreaded sort of passing around in the U shape. And I don't think we've seen as much of that this season. So
it's been a bit more direct.
Has it been a bit more fun? Have we been moving a bit?
Well, I think it has been a bit more fun. And
it's been a bit more chaotic, which I don't know if that kind of equates to fun.
You kind of needed the second leg of the Malasheva tie to be like that, because the first leg of the Malasheva tie was what the first leg of the Malasheva tie was.
Not fun.
It definitely wasn't fun. It wasn't fun to be there. I'm sure it wasn't fun to watch, regardless of whether you were in the stadium or at home. But
I confirm.
That sort of just... It had a real spark. The atmosphere was fantastic. It felt like Easter Road was the place to be, and I think the performance on the pitch replicated that. Now, we saw a little bit of that in the Motherwell game too, particularly in the second half. Obviously it would have been a very different story And David Gray made reference to this as well, so having, if a goal went in or they converted some of those chances, it's a very different game. I think Easter Road becomes a very different place, and I think we go into this game tomorrow night in a very different mood, with 3 points and actually seeing some pretty good football. I mean, that was one of the things that David said in the press conference just over there, not that long ago, was that, you kind of watch it back, and I think he said, bad games are never as bad when you watch them, and good games are never quite as good. Yeah. But he reiterated the frustration of, walking away with nothing from that game, which I think more or less anybody would have said was an unfair reflection on how Hibs played. I mean, they weren't clinical enough, and if you're not clinical enough, Craig Nisbet said it, we said it, you deserve to be punished for that. I mean, football games are won by scoring more goals than your opposition, or they're won by keeping the opposition out. Just finishing with a number bigger than your opponent.
Yes.
This is the cutting edge analysis you get on the Hibs Observer. So please do subscribe for free if you want more of the home truths about football, which we'll give you. But
why football should be fun, and why you need to score more goals than your opponent to win games.
Right, so long as you score more. If you score more goals, you win the game of football. But it's true.
Yeah, and it just reminded me of, I think it was, I forget who it was. I feel it was maybe Blanchflower or something like that, who said our tactic is to equalise for the other team scores, and I like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to confuse things by sort of so if you've got two-legged games, but
there was a moment in the World Cup commentary where I think one of the commentators did actually say, if they get a goal, or maybe it was in the Euros, if they get a goal now, they'd be ahead. Or if they get a goal now, they'd be winning the game. And it's like, well, I laughed at that and look what I'm doing now. But the point being that it would be a very different game had Hibs converted those chances.
Yeah.
And I think everything we've heard, and I think partly what we've said in our analysis pieces and our sort of discussions about the game is, if you're more concerned if you're not creating the chances. You can refine things like that sort of clinical edge in front of goal. That comes with time on the grass here. That comes with time on the grass in competitive games. That will get better. The forwards will get sharper, so long as they stay sort of injury-free and fit. But
I suppose the big thing is that
creativity is still the fun side of football. That is there.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
And it'll get better as those creative players come back.
Yeah, of course. And one thing that struck me is that, like, short term, you'd probably have a lot of Hibs fans who were there on Sunday saying that they would rather have played like Motherwell did and won. And, I get that. But at the same time, you look at the way Hibs play, and I mean, we actually said this a lot last season, that if Hibs played the same way, if they put together a complete performance every week, then eventually we're going to blow somebody away 5 or 6-0. Now, obviously that never happened because I don't think we ever really got a complete performance. We got elements of complete performances in certain games.
So that sort of 30-minute spell of we're going to blow them away, and then, like you say, the dreaded U-shaped passing. Yeah. Well,
but I think
fatigued.
I think you ideally want to be. I mean, it's a results business, and managers need to get results. Fans want results, but at the same time, and this isn't even about the whole Hibs fans appreciating flair and free flowing attacking football. I mean, obviously a lot of us do. It's fun. Just to go back to the kind of watchword of today's pod.
It's why you go to a football stadium.
It's difficult to sort of look at it and say, well, if you were winning games, but you were sort of playing a match and it was like a repeat of Sunday, and you were Motherwell, because I mean Motherwell defended for their lives. I mean that's the other thing to point out, that they were throwing themselves in front of shots. Alex Paulsen had sort of 2, maybe 3 ridiculous saves. And there was a lot of misfortune in there as well. I think there was I feel like there was another chance from Nathan Lowe. If it could have gone the right side of the post. Any of those shots, if they were just a little bit lower, you never know. But I think ideally want like a mix of playing the way that Hibs played for large parts of the second half against Motherwell, combined with actually scoring the goals, because I think it's something like Hibs had 6 chances on target, Motherwell had 5, and the difference was Motherwell took them, Hibs didn't.
Yeah.
So, you boil it down like that, it looks very straightforward. But I think, Gray got a lot of criticism last season for, the football, and that it was quite often, a bit kind of agricultural. It wasn't maybe the most fun to watch. Keep coming back to fun. I'm inside my own head now.
We know what the headline of this video is going to be.
It was fun. But, it's... I think you want a kind of happy medium where you want you want the football to be entertaining, you want it to be free-flowing, you want it to be exciting, you want it to be attacking. And we saw a lot of that in the first sort of 60 minutes against Malasheva. We saw it for a significant portion of the second half against Motherwell. And you think, well, if they can put that together for 80, 90 minutes, then, that's where it comes from when you say, like, they're capable of beating anyone on their day. And they are. And we saw it at times against Legia Warsaw. We saw it at times against Partizan. And we've just not seen it enough. And I think that's probably the frustrating part for David Gray, is when he sees elements of it. And, maybe part of it comes down to his coaching, maybe part of it comes down to motivation. I don't know. I'm not the expert here in sort of football psychology, but, I think it's just trying to get to a stage where the bulk of the game is being played like the first hour of the Malasheva game and the bulk of the second half against Motherwell. And if you're doing that, then chances are, more often than not, you're going to come out in the end of the game with the right scoreline.
Yeah, and it will come. And I think that was one of the key messages from today is, as these players come back, okay, right, 10 days, whatever, for the next leg, who knows, but, things are heading in the right direction. Okay, yes, we've heard that a lot, but we've heard things are heading in the right direction a lot, but things are heading in the right direction. Don't say we don't repeat the club line. But once those players start to come back, we will see more of that. I think as sort of sharpness comes in through games, we'll see more of that.
But you also don't want to take a risk. You don't want to.
No, not at this stage of the season.
Exactly, because then you do sort of run the risk of, are these players going to be out longer term? And I think that, obviously you were still in the transfer window, but then you've got an even bigger squad at some point. You can't keep everyone happy. You might not be able to get in who you need, and it's not even necessarily about the individual. Sometimes it's about how they gel with others. I mean, I think you look at how Jamie McGrath and Owen Eldon kind of linked up at times last season. It was a kind of understanding between the two of them, and they just seemed to, just connect really well. And it's the same in other areas of the pitch where you have players playing. It's like they know where the other's going to be. They know that if the other player makes a certain run, they can make another one in a different direction, that kind of thing. But I think when you've got a squad at the moment that's big enough, and you've got a squad that arguably certainly should have been capable of beating Malasheva in both legs, and obviously came close to not losing to Motherwell, and arguably came close to beating Motherwell. That's without a starting centre back in Rocky Bashiri. It's without your starting left wing back in Nicky Cadden. It's without your starting playmaker in Jamie McGrath. It's without one of your new signings in Callum Wright. And for some of those games, it's without kind of your super sub Ante Shuto.
And it's without sort of the idea of an additional investment as well. I mean, David Gray, even today, hasn't sort of poured cold water on the idea that there will be incomings and outgoings. So there could well be.
Well, there needs to be.
Yeah, well, there could well be, and there should be further investment into the squad. So without that as well, but you see those. Sorry, I interrupted you halfway through your point. I wanted you to finish it.
I don't remember what the point was now.
Fair enough.
No, but it was.
Football should be fun. That was probably it.
No, but it was just about sort of not taking risks, because, I mean, I think when we talked about Martin Boyle today and having this Achilles issue, I mean that for me kind of threw up a, does that mean that Boyle might not start tomorrow night? And then if Callum Wright's fit, does that then mean that he comes in and it's back to the conventional kind of 3-4-1-2 on paper?
Yeah.
But again, you would expect it to still be sort of quite fluid, like it has been when it's been kind of a 4-3-3 at times. But just things like that, and I just thought, like, you don't want to play players if you don't have to, or you don't want to overload them. I think would be the key when you're doing this kind of Thursday Sunday at the moment. You certainly don't want players to be kind of saying, "Oh, I'll risk it for that game," but it might sort of set me back. So I think there will come a time where I think David Gray is saying to his players, "Look, if you're 60-65%, I still need you to kind of play." And I think there were probably times last season where players played when they weren't quite right. I mean, we know Hibs players have done this before. Joe Newell, for example, I think that David Gray's first season played for probably far longer than he should have, with a bit of a kind of injury, a bit of a problem, a bit of an issue. And, that ended up keeping him out for the best part of 12 months. So I think it's probably, and part of the reason that he did that, he was saying, was because he sort of didn't, he felt like he wanted to try and influence change in the way the results were going, that he just wanted to kind of play his part, and obviously you want to try and avoid that where possible. I mean, footballers, it's a short career. You know that you're going to want to play as much as possible, and the sort of carrot of European games as well. It's difficult if you're going to be missing them. I remember speaking to Chris Cadden when he was still a Hibs player, and I think he'd sort of twice had got injuries towards the end of the season, which meant he missed out on Europe. And that happened twice at the same club in 3 years or whatever it was. And I remember kind of saying to him on the eve of what I think would have been his first campaign in Europe with Hibs, but sort of third time lucky, and it very much was. And you understand, players want to play in Europe because it's not something that many players get to do, especially if you're somebody like Callum Wright. You're coming up from the EFL. I think he said himself part of the reason for signing was that chance to play in Europe that you don't get. Europe is a very long way away from kind of the top of League One, the bottom of the Championship in England. And so I think there is obviously that desire to be involved, that sort of wanting to play as much as possible, and because as we know, it can be a short campaign in Europe, depending on how the draw goes, depending on how the results go. So you can understand him wanting to get back as quickly as possible, but again, the club probably saying, look, we don't want to risk playing you in this game, and we don't need to. Just make sure that you get yourself right for for the next one, and then that way you've got players who are champing at the bit to play, who are fitter than they might otherwise be. They've had more time to rest, to recover, and it's better for them. It's better for the club. It's just maybe a little bit difficult sometimes if we go back to what we were saying about needing a spark. I'm thinking we could have really done with this player or that player, but they're not available. And then it's like, well, we could have put them on the bench, but then if they're on the bench, there's then that kind of almost a kind of you're sort of thinking, oh, well, I have to use them if they're on the bench, and then you don't use them, then it's like, well, why are they on the bench if they're not fit? So there's a lot of moving parts, but I think I mean, after all this, Callum Wright might not even play tomorrow. It just depends on how he comes through the training, but we hope we'll see him. Hope,
no reaction, but it's a long season ahead.
It is,
and sort of protecting, almost bubble wrapping players as much as you can, and just making sure you have that depth in the squad. Because I mean, lastly, sort of another thing he spoke about was the Thursday Sunday schedule, and just sort of making sure you have the bodies. We've seen in the past what happens to other teams in Scotland when they have sort of league phase or group stage European football and play that alongside 2 domestic cups and the league campaign. It can take its toll. And
I suppose as well, just to jump in, just to interrupt you again because it's what I do.
Yeah, fair enough. That's what it's rapport. It's camaraderie.
It's me trying to cram everything in for. That's
fine, yeah.
But I think when you do have quite a few players out injured, as Hibs do at the moment, that should be the impetus should be there for the players who are fit to sort of think, right, I've got a chance here to showcase what I can do and make it really difficult for them coming back. Because what you don't want as a football manager is to have players coming back from injury who then just slot straight back into the team because the person who's been playing instead of them hasn't quite been up to scratch, or they haven't had the same kind of impact.
Yeah.
So that's, it's a weird thing where, with football clubs, and especially at Hibs, where the dressing room is so tight-knit and you have players coming out and saying, oh, it's one of the best dressing rooms I've ever been involved in. You want to make life more difficult for the injured boys when they're coming back. You want to say, well, actually, I've quite been enjoying my starting berth while you've been out injured, and I'm not giving it up without a fight. So, that's good for, obviously, the player who's got the starting berth at this moment in time because they've kind of got that drive to hold on to it. It gives the injured player something to aim for and say, right, well, I'm going to knock them off their perch because I want that starting berth. And the manager's got competition for places. He's got 2 players who are going at it hammer and tongs, hell for leather, all the cliches about 110% and everything like that. And just sort of saying, this is a great dilemma to have. I've got somebody who's been doing really well.
It's to everyone's benefit.
Yeah, somebody who's been doing really well as a sort of deputy, but then somebody who's coming back and is showing up really well in training. And, you've got to make a call, and you either have to say, I'm going to use him from the bench because I think he'll be able to give us extra legs late on, or, he can have like an impact off the bench, or do a starting because I think we've missed having his influence, in the team on the park from the get-go. So, a good dilemma for the manager to have, and obviously, not in terms of taking risks and bringing players back before they're ready. He does have that sort of strength and depth, but you want to have as many players fit as possible, to have that decision to make. So even though you look at it and say, well, it's not been great for Hibs that you've been missing 3 or 4 or 5 players through injury, it has or should be giving the other players that kind of little kind of kick up the backside to think, well, hang on a minute, I've got a chance here to have like a better season or to play more games than I might have thought. So as you say, it is a benefit to everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And I think well, I think I've probably said the big message of today about 5 times, but the key thing is it's a focus on tomorrow night's game. It's a focus on just getting your name into the hat for the playoff round, and only the first leg, but obviously a big step towards doing that against Shkendija tomorrow. So we will bring you all the coverage from that. We'll both be at Easter Road tomorrow night. I'm actually off to the Shkendija press conference. I think we're getting the manager and the player, so there'll be some things to read tomorrow morning, I'm sure, from that. Do stay tuned. On the Hibs Observer, £12 for 12 months. We think that represents the best value for Hibernian, well, the best value for the best Hibernian journalism. All the best. You'll have lots of fun. You'll have lots of fun. I promise you that, at least. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. It is free. It does massively support us bringing this fun content. Hopefully fun for you to watch. Certainly fun for us to produce.
Even if it doesn't always look like it.
Even if it doesn't, I think we look like we have a great time. I mean, people told us we looked a bit miserable when we started, but we've become friends.
I thought it was more results than anything else.
I was just thinking about the sort of heartfelt bond between us. The tight,
the Hibs felt bond.
The tight knit dressing room of the Hibs Observer.
The Hibs felt bond, please.
It's quite tight in here. So I'm off to Easter Road now. Definitely not just to pick up the third kit, but that may well be finding its way into my bag, and I will bring you.
For these puffs, by the way. Or?
What, all of the things I've said about the Hibs third kit?
Yeah.
There you go. I'm a mouthpiece to the club. The rumours were true, but it's a nice kit. It's a nice kit.
Retro badge as well.
Retro badge. Before my time, but do appreciate things like that.
You're not going to win any friends with comments like that.
It's before my time.
Yeah, but you're still not going to win any friends with it. You're reminding everyone else of, their lack of youth. And by everyone else, I mean me, primarily.
This is why I should wrap up these intros quicker, isn't it? Where were we? Subscribe to the Hibs Observer if you enjoy conversations and domestics like this, and we will bring you many more of them in the weeks to come. But first of all, that game against Shkendija tomorrow night in the UEFA Conference League third qualifying round, first leg, and we'll bring you all of the action, so stay tuned, and we will see you then. Bye for now.